For nearly 2 months, search teams looked for Lynette Hooker in the Sea of Abaco. Boats, aircraft, divers, every resource oriented around the same area, the area Brian Hooker told them to look. They found nothing. Then investigators reviewed evidence from the boat. Within days, the search moved. Federal divers were not returning to the same area. They were going somewhere else entirely. Searches do not move without a reason, and the reason investigators suddenly became interested in a specific, previously unsearched stretch of water, a place Brian never mentioned, may be the most important development in this entire case. For weeks they searched where Brian said. Now they are searching where the evidence points. Lynette Hooker is 55 years old, from Onstead, Michigan. She and Brian had been living aboard Soulmate, their 46-foot sailboat, for 12 years. Not visiting the ocean, living on it, full-time, their life. She was active, fit, an experienced sailor. Her daughter Carly described her as someone who would not easily fall off a boat. She documented her life on the water. She loved it. She chose it. On the evening of April 4th, she left the dock at Hopetown in the Bahamas for what was supposed to be a routine ride back to Soulmate. She has not been seen since. Her daughter Carly's words on Mother's Day, "It's pretty hard right now to know that she's not a text away anymore." April 4th, 2026. Brian and Lynette left Hopetown around 7:30 p.m. in their 8-foot dinghy, heading towards Soulmate moored at Aunt Pat's Bay. Brian's account, rough water. Lynette fell overboard. The engine key went with her. Engine died. He paddled for hours. Arrived at Marsh Harbor Boatyard around 4 a.m. That account drove every search decision for 54 days. That account turned out to be the problem. Here is what 54 days of searching looks like. Dive boats moving in slow, methodical grids across the Sea of Abaco. Coast Guard aircraft covering the same stretches from above. Marine units scanning areas where current projections said Lynette might have drifted. If she went overboard where Brian said she did, if the currents moved the way Brian's story required them to move. All of it organized around one starting point, the location Brian described, the drift path Brian outlined, the direction Brian indicated. 54 days, no trace of Lynette Hooker, not a piece of clothing, not an item from the dinghy, not a single thing that confirmed any part of his account. A U.S. official, confirming the GPS development to NBC News, said it plainly. Investigators had been searching in the wrong area of the Sea of Abaco. In the wrong area. 54 days. In the wrong area. That is what happens when a search is built on information that does not match the evidence, and that is why, when the evidence changed the picture, the search moved immediately. At some point in the weeks following Lynette's disappearance, investigators gained access to data from Brian Hooker's electronic devices. They did not announce it immediately. They reviewed it. They compared it against every other piece of information they had. The account Brian gave, the drift projections the search was built on, the photographs of calm water that contradicted the storm he described. And then something in that data changed the equation, not slightly. Not in a way that required further interpretation. The data showed something specific, a location, a movement, a record that the search, the entire 54-day search, had never been built around. On May 27th, U.S. officials confirmed the same fact simultaneously to 6 national news networks: CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox News Digital, CNN, News Nation. 6 networks, one day, one confirmation. That does not happen by accident. When federal investigators brief 6 outlets on the same day, they are sending a message. The stretch of water investigators suddenly cared about, the place Brian never mentioned, was about to be searched for the first time. What the evidence showed, and what investigators believe is in that specific stretch of water, is next. Subscribe to Crime Deepcut. When the divers surface, we will be here. Here is what the evidence showed. GPS data extracted from at least one of Brian Hooker's electronic devices recorded a track of his movements on the night of April 4th. That track does not match what Brian told investigators. The device was out on the water. It stopped, at locations Brian had never mentioned, coordinates that existed in no search grid, no drift projection, no account he had given to anyone. Then the device returned to shore. A man drifting helplessly in a powerless dinghy does not stop at specific deep-water locations off his stated route. He drifts. He arrives wherever the current takes him. He does not stop at 2 coordinates and then leave. But a man navigating purposefully in the dark does. For weeks they searched where Brian said. Now they are searching where the evidence points, for the first time. The Coast Guard formally requested authorization from the Bahamian government to send federal dive teams into the newly identified area. That request was a specific, documented, government-to-government application to search a precise location the evidence had identified. The Bahamas cooperated. The search moved. The newly identified search area sits in water approximately 25 feet deep. That depth matters. 25 feet is below what 54 days of surface searches could reach. Objects placed at that depth sit undisturbed. Tide does not move them. Surface current does not reach them. A dive team in 25 feet of clear Bahamian water has strong visibility. They can grid the ocean floor. They can find what is there. They know where to look. For the first time in 54 days, they know exactly where to look. The question the entire investigation has been building toward is not what the GPS showed. It is what the GPS led them to. People who sailed with Lynette have described someone who was careful on the water, experienced, not reckless, not careless. Someone who had spent 12 years learning every mood the sea has. One person who knew her told reporters this was her life. She knew that water. She is the reason federal divers are now authorized to search a stretch of sea that did not exist in any search grid until this week. On May 27th, the same day U.S. officials briefed 6 national networks, the Coast Guard went to the homes of Lynette's family. Carly Aylesworth provided a DNA sample. So did Darlene Hamlet, Lynette's mother. So did Lynette's father. The Coast Guard collected those samples for a specific reason, to enable identification of remains when the search produces results. They are not hoping to find Lynette. They are preparing to identify her. Carly sat across from federal agents and provided her DNA so that her mother could be identified when divers bring something up from 25 feet of water in the Bahamas. She has carried this since April 4th. She is still carrying it. When the dive team goes in, when results come back, Crime Deepcut will cover every development. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Federal investigators have not stated publicly what they expect to find at those coordinates. They do not need to. The DNA collection speaks. Law enforcement agencies ask families for DNA to assist in identification when they believe a body is coming. Not as a precaution, as preparation. The GPS track speaks. The device stopped at locations Brian never mentioned, locations at depth, locations consistent with deliberate navigation, not passive drift. The evidence recovered from the soulmate speaks. The FBI laboratory at Quantico is processing what was found aboard the vessel Brian and Lynette had been living on for 12 years. Quantico handles evidence for federal prosecutions. Evidence goes there when investigators intend to use it in a courtroom. Taken together, the GPS track, the DNA samples, the Quantico referral, the international authorization, their actions suggest they believe this location is worth searching with a high degree of confidence. That level of preparation does not happen for a weak lead. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. He has denied wrongdoing. He told NBC News, "I've never harmed Lynette, and I would never harm Lynette, and I want to find Lynette." His attorney declined to comment. That denial exists alongside a federal criminal investigation, an FBI evidence lab at Quantico, a dive team authorized by 2 governments, and DNA samples sitting ready for the moment divers surface. The case is not resolved. The search has not yet produced what investigators are looking for. What has changed is the direction. For 54 days, the search was in one place. Now it is in another. For weeks, they searched where Brian said. Now they are searching where the evidence points. Until the divers surface and investigators speak, that shift remains the most important fact in this case. Lynette Hooker is 55 years old, from Onstead, Michigan. She spent 12 years building a life on the water she is now in. She is the reason the search moved. Not the GPS, not the coordinates, not the depth. Her. The search moved because federal investigators believe they know where to find her, and for the people who loved her, Carly, Darlene, the friends who could not reconcile what they were told with what they knew of Lynette, this week was the first week the investigation moved toward the answer they have been pointing toward from the beginning. Crime Deepcut stays on this case. Subscribe.